Hello, I'm Daniel Evans, and I'm currently playing the title role of Edward II at the Swan Theatre in Stratford-Upon-Avon. The play was written by Christopher Marlowe in around 1593, and it explores the powerful themes of love, leadership, homophobia, and the precarious nature of power. As part of our research, our director Daniel Raggett and I had the huge privilege of interviewing two legendary actors, Sir Simon Russell Beale and Sir Ian McKellen, who themselves made an indelible mark on the performance history of the play through their memorable interpretations. In these intimate exchanges, they both reflect on the complexities of the role, the enduring significance of the text within our modern context, and the ways in which its portrayal of leadership, queerness, and politics continues to resonate.
Simon, you know I saw you play this part twice when I was a teenager.
Yes, I didn't know you'd seen it at all, but see it twice, yes, you are good.
It was seminal for me. It made such a massive impression. So thank you for being with us and thanks for your time. We just wanted to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
Basically, tell us how to do it.
Yeah. If I can remember, I'm casting, because how long ago was it now?
It was 89 in Stratford and 90 in London.
Yeah. 35 years ago. God blimey. I mean, terrific cast. You know, Kieran Hines playing Mortimer, Katie Baheen playing the Queen.
And it was directed by the actor.
Yes,
Gerard Murphy.
Gerard Murphy directed it, and he was quite a big character, Gerald, but he was very, very, very concerned about the hierarchy of the court. I remember. He loved this idea that it was a very, very strict court, and it was a very, very a court in control of itself, you know. And then this man comes in and does something which shakes them all.
Ian, you played this part in 1970, 69, 70.
That's right, when I was 29 years old for the Prospect Theatre Company, which was a touring company. Did mainly classics, usually 2 plays at a time, and toured around the country. Sometimes came to London, sometimes went abroad.
And you played it in rep with Richard II.
We'd been doing that play the previous year, and they decided to revive it and wanted another play to go with it, and chose Edward II.
So one of the things that we've been talking about, which is how much Shakespeare stole from Marlowe.
Do you suppose they knew each other?
Undoubtedly, don't you
Well,
think?
it's an oddity. They were born in the same year.
Yeah, 3 months
Through
apart.
the same, is that right?
Yeah.
So it would have been odd if they didn't know each other. But they do write very differently.
Yo, very.
I mean, Shakespeare, when it got to blank verse, was subtle and ambiguous and not always on the nose. And there's a lot going on underneath, where Marlowe's all there. It's how bold. Everybody's the person they seem to be. There's no pretense going on.
Yeah. But the play is brutal, isn't it?
Yes, it's brutal. Marlowe, as we know, is very, very regular.
Yes.
Isn't he?
Was
this the face that launched 1,000 ships?
Yes.
That burned the top of the...
Yes.
And in things like, as we know, in Tamburlaine or in Faustus, it's sort of magnificent and it's sort of rich, and it indulges in, you know, colours and fabrics and jewels and geography and mountains. And I found Edward II, which I think is almost, I think it's the last complete play.
It is, yeah.
I don't know how you find it, but I found it very, I used to compare it to Marlowe's verse in early plays was like sort of galleons going around the ocean. This was like a submarine. It's just, it's very, it's very unshowy for Marlowe. And I wonder whether he was, if he'd lived, whether he was developing a new, more brutalist style. So, of course, it's violent, as you say, in the physical sense, but it's violent in the verse in the sense that it's very unsentimental until, it's never sentimental, and unpoetic until the big scene where he gives up his crown, and also, of course, the death scene with Lightbourne, when some other flavour, a softer flavour comes in. But I just love this idea. I really found it exciting. It was sort of ruthlessly political. Every, do this, get rid of him, get rid of whatever.
Edward is a willful young man, spoilt, outrageous, extreme, untamed, and terribly privileged and takes advantage of his feelings. But when denied them, and when the extreme is done, the cruelty of killing his beloved Galveston, we are not to be surprised that that nature will turn and become himself capable of cruelty against his wife and others he knows, and the world at large. And I took that as the message of the play.
Edward is a simpler picture in the sense that I think Richard II is quite a simple play. I think it's elaborately written and it's very long, but in terms of the psychology, it is quite simple in the way that Edward is simple. It's just a man who progressively becomes aware that he's not being followed and he's not being understood, and doesn't even understand why he's not being understood, or whether he's got it right in the first. I mean, it's like a sort of as you say, increased bemusement, and then I think a sudden emotional realization that for all his petulance and for all his bad behaviour, he really, really needs the crown emotionally. That is the first time I think we see a really genuinely unpostured response to something is when he has to give the crown away. He suddenly realises that defines him. And I think Shakespeare does the same thing, but deepens a little bit by saying exactly that the crown has defined me all my life. Without the crown, I'm no one. And there's a point when Richard goes, you're taking away my name, which I always thought was a bit excessive, because I thought, well, can't he be called Richard? I mean, I don't know. But what he's saying, isn't it? All my identity is bound in with that thing. And I think for Edward, that is, and for Richard, they're not profound thinkers, either of them. But for Edward, it is a moment of profound understanding of sort of why he was put on earth.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you take away that, what am I here for?
Yes. And there's a moment, I think, of realization of how he's ruled, because he says, commend me to my son and bid him rule better than I.
Yes. It's heartbreaking.
And Dan, you've talked a lot about how you feel like the play obviously must have been radical then, but you feel like questioning its radical nature now.
Well, yeah, that was one of the things I said I wanted to ask you, Ian, was I heard you talking about that production of the play and the Derek Jarman film, which he shifted the end to, you have a pan over all these gay rights activists and the final lines of it, and it very much, I think also the poker doesn't go in, it's just seen to be thrown into water. He certainly turned it into something very political, and I just wondered what it was like just snogging men on stage in 1969.
Well, as it was James Lawrence, and very pleasant.
Yes.
In 1970, 20 years before the Jarman film, our production was thought to be compelling and by some outrageous. But we didn't exaggerate anything in the play and just did it. It was directed, in our case, by Toby Robertson, a happily married man who was also gay. There were a number of gay people in the cast, including myself. None of us declared, none of us openly gay. It was a period when it's perfectly possible to have a happy life, open with one's friends and associates in the theatre. But to the public, and in my case to my family, not out. And we felt, obviously, a personal connection with the play because it seemed to be the first play ever written in the English language with a gay hero. But we were doing it because it was Christopher Marlowe and it was a wonderful play. And it was a good partnership with Richard II, a play in which there are many similarities and differences. We didn't think of it as a political play, a statement. It wasn't about being, it wasn't a gay rights move on our part. It was just a company of classically trained actors, some established actors, giving their talents to yet another great piece of literature. When we arrived at the Edinburgh Festival, the impact was just too much for Councillor John Kidd, who complained to the watch committee that it was disgusting that two men should be seen kissing. The second night, police were sent along to watch the performance and sat on the front row. They reported negatively back to the committee, and nothing else happened. We then did it on television.
Mm.
We also did Richard II on television, its companion piece. When it was shown in America on PBS, Masterpiece Theatre, as had been true here, I think it was the first time two men had ever kissed on television.
Gosh.
And to this day, I bump into people who said it changed my life.
Oh, gosh.
I've just finished a play literally 2 days ago, and the last performance, two people decided to walk out because it was about, there wasn't even any physical contact, about a gay man in Victorian England.
It's insane.
Isn't that extraordinary? Wow. I mean, I thought that sort of thing had disappeared, and of course it hasn't.
No.
And I bet if they'd seen a play in which my hand was chopped off as it is in Titus Andronicus, they probably would have stayed.
Yeah.
Generally, there are some sprigs of hope, and so generally with gayness and leadership. So we've yet to have an openly gay Prime Minister here. I mean, I know there are rumours about Ted Heath, but we've yet to have major football players. You know, we've yet to have a best actor. Male football players. Good, yes, there are plenty of women who have come out. But yet to have a best actor, openly gay best actor winning an Oscar. You know, we think that we're liberal, but there is still an issue.
Mm. The arguments against people in the Premier League coming out are that their careers will be damaged. Mm. I think the first person in the Premier League who comes out as being gay will overnight be the most famous athlete in the world, and sponsors will be queuing up to sign him up. I think it's very short-sighted of their managers, which is where the pressure comes. Mm. It's the managers, it's the agents, it's the bosses who don't do it, themselves not gay, not understanding, and being cruel to lads who probably are not quite in touch with the world at large because they're so focused on their athleticism.
But that sounds like such
excuse me, that used to be the case in the theatre, I think.
No, I was just going to say that sounds like such a description of Edward and the nobles, in the sense that they want to maintain the status quo of Longshanks, of the first who's died, and he comes in and just the language that is used, I've always sort of wondered how much of it is coded in the sense that, like, you know, frolic with his minion and sort of...
Unnatural king.
Unnatural king, like which is unnatural to brave his nobles, but I always wonder whether that's kind of...
Oh, yeah.
The way we've played that, Mortimer has that big speech where he says, you know, his wanton humour grieves not me, but this I scorn, which is like, I always feel that sort of thing, like, you know, it's not that he's gay that I have a problem. It's just all this other stuff, which is really a coded way of saying...
I see, that's interesting, yes.
And is that the equivalent of some of my best friends again?
Yeah, some of my best friends again.
I have no problem.
But if Edward had taken up with, let's say, a foreign queen, a female queen, and were cutting out of the power structure the local barons, they might feel just as strongly that she had to be got rid of. Do you not think? I mean, it's their own power that they're wanting to retain.
Yeah, money.
They don't kill Gaveston because they disapprove of two men being in love, do they? I should be at the first night.
Are you coming?
Absolutely. And
oh, how lovely.
If only to welcome you back to the stage.
Well, I should say
where you belong. It's wonderful that an actor is back at the head of a national company, but that he should also act.
Very well.
I should say
very well is appropriate, and it would be a great loss if he didn't carry on.
I should say this, when you were talking earlier about people writing to you saying that they'd seen you as Edward II and it had changed their lives, you know you did that for me when I saw you and Michael Cashman in Bent at the National Theatre.
I do.
And I, you know, I wrote to you because you came to my school when I was 15 and you gave us a backstage tour, and it was such a life-changing experience for me. and that's God, one of the amazing things about theatre is that it can do that to people.
And you said, when I asked you what you were going to be when you left school, I think you were 15 or maybe 14, you said you were going to be the first director of the Welsh National Theatre.
I failed.
I think you've done even better.
I'm not sure Wales would agree. But anyway, Ian, thank you.
Thank you.